Part 3. So here I am installing the oil pump. I had to order those 3 bolts from Yamaha. I stripped one when I was taking the oil pump apart. Pretty simple here, just line it up. There's no gasket. Line it up and install it. There was a torque spec for this oil pump, but I think it's kind of impossible to torque a Phillips screw. Even though it's not necessary, later in this video you'll see I did prime the oil pump. I filled up some of those galleys with oil and rotated the pump by hand to work some of the bubbles out. There was nothing in the service manual about it, but I figured it couldn't hurt to prime it. Here I am installing the seal for the shift shaft. There is a specification in the service manual on the depth. I believe it was 1 millimeter below the surface of the case. Here is the installation of the reverse lockout lever. Here I am installing the C-clip on the reverse lockout lever. The manual did mention that there is a curved side and a flat side on the C-clips. I, for the life of me, cannot tell the difference between one side or the other. Here's a good view of the reverse lockout lever, how the spring fits onto the shaft and lever. I had to go back to the service manual about 3 or 4 times to figure that one out. Here I am installing the shift drum pawl. I did use Loctite on that bolt and I did torque it. It's important that the pawl fits into the bushing properly. If not, it will bind. Here I am doing a dry run on putting the case halves together. I do have some of the gears, the reverse idler shaft is out, but I just wanted to see that it would fit together and everything would line up, which it did. It went together surprisingly smooth. When I removed the case, all the gears came out on the other side of the case of where I originally installed them. It actually ended up making it much easier for the final reassembly of the case. As you can see, I fought with it quite a bit to get it back apart. This is 3-bond 1315. That's what the service manual recommends. Here I am priming the oil pump. I put a very, very thin bead of 3-bond on all of the mating surfaces, making sure my dowel pins are in the right position. Once I had 3-bond on, I went across with my finger and I smoothed it out so it was a very, very, very thin coat. I went into the oil pickup tubes with a screwdriver and very gently cleaned any excess that could have possibly gotten into any of the galleys. The case halves went together much easier than I anticipated. Here I am putting all the bolts in. I did tighten them by hand, or I drill tightened them first, and then I went through in a crisscross and tightened them by hand. I was not able to torque these bolts. My torque wrench starts at 5 foot-pounds, and I think these bolts called for 7 foot-pounds. So it wouldn't have been accurate. As a final step, I'm going around the perimeter with my ratchet 2 times just to make sure I got everything and that they were all reasonably tight. This is the installation of the four-wheel drive clutch pack. As with everything in this transmission, for assembly lube, I use petroleum jelly. I used it on all the seals, bearings, shafts, wherever called for it in the service manual. Same technique here as with the case halves. I ran them in with the drill and then went through with a ratchet, made sure they were tight, and then did a lap around the perimeter just to make sure. This is the installation of the front drive yoke. It's torqued to 140 foot-pounds. Here you can watch me fight with the rear drive shaft coupler. This one is also torqued to 140 foot-pounds. I had quite a bit of difficulty holding the case while torquing this. The struggle here is real. I was almost ready to pick the whole transmission up and put it in my bench vise. Success. The next video will be the installation of the clutch pack.